So, you know how most horror shows or horror movies, they try to scare you with the usual. Those creepy sounds, flickering lights, all that usual stuff.
Yeah, it's always these ghosts in the mirror and things crawling out of somewhere, nowhere. And sometimes, you know what, something that I don't personally appreciate the zombie horror.
Oh, I know. But this one, The Haunting of Bly Manor, it's different. It doesn't just try to scare you. It kind of stays with you.
Yes, I think it's more like I would call it a slow chill
Mhm.
and also strangely emotional. Nandi, I don't think I've ever cried in a horror movie. Have
Oh
you?
my god, same. In hindsight, I realized this isn't all about ghosts. It's about people, about love.
It's such a strange world, isn't it?
Mhm.
It pulls you in, but you never ever feel steady in it.
Yeah.
Like you're inside someone's memory, so you keep hopping, jumping, moving in and out.
Oh, agreed. Memory or a dream, a really sad but really beautiful dream.
Yeah, so today let's tell our listeners why Bly Manor stays with you. Not just because it's scary, listeners, but because it's one that's quiet, a little eerie, and deeply human.
Or, as Flora from the series would say, perfectly splendid.
Oh, I love that.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Oops, We Binged It Again, the podcast where a Gen Z daughter and her Gen X mum take on everything from classics to hidden gems. I'm Nandini.
And I'm Mukta. We keep things quick, honest, spoiler free.
Two generations, one screen, and usually, if you've listened to our old episodes, very different opinions.
But always one goal, helping you figure out what's worth watching next.
Absolutely.
And Nandini, since you've already again used your chance at the one word custom for our reviews, and which, you know what, don't laugh, which of late has become more like a one sentence for you.
Hyphenated one word.
Ah, yeah, of course, yes. So let me share mine. I will use two this time. I will call this series, and honestly, I believe in it, emotionally haunted.
Ah, emotionally haunted. That's perfect actually, because the haunting of Bly Manor really is emotionally haunted. And look, I know I've kind of stretched the whole one word, one phrase rule lately, but
Yes, you have.
but that's because some stories, like Bly Manor, you would agree, just can't be summed up that neatly. This one, it's quiet, it's strange, and it pulls you in really slowly. Not with like big scares, but how would I say it? Unsettling stillness?
Mhm.
So, with that, let's step inside Bly Manor.
Careful, I hope never.
Oh my god, same. So let's walk into it really carefully and get out really soon.
Nandi, careful what you wish for.
True.
So, listeners, The Haunting of Bly Manor, we watched it on Netflix. It's a limited series, 9 episodes, about 45 to 50 minutes each.
Yeah, and it's by Mike Flanagan, the same creator as The Haunting of Hill House, also on Netflix, which we've also watched.
And honestly, this doesn't come as a surprise to at least Nandini because she knows me, the ardent lover of such series. I've almost watched, I believe, every spy mystery horror that there is.
I think so. So we have a bag full of hidden treasures to share with you. So do look out for those.
But both shows, this Haunting of Hill House
Mm-hmm.
and The Haunting of Bly Manor, they definitely have that creepy, slow burn horror vibe.
Mm-hmm.
But I still think I ended up liking Bly Manor a bit more.
Yeah.
Or maybe a lot more.
No, I see the point because if you think about it, Hill House was intense. There were lots of scares, super psychological.
Yeah.
But with Bly Manor, the fear felt almost quieter.
Right. See, it's still scary. Don't get us wrong, listeners. But there's also this sadness running through it that really hits you. It helps you connect with the characters and the story in a very, I believe, in a better manner.
I agree. And if you think about it, Bly Manor is just easier to follow as well.
Yeah, I agree. But Bly Manor that's why I would say it's a bit simpler in structure and very rich in feeling. You have the horror, but it's deeply and tightly tied to the memory and the grief.
Agreed. But again, like we said, Hill House is super interesting as well. Different story, has its own twists, own turns. But just that on a relative scale, I think we personally enjoyed Bly Manor a bit more.
And I enjoyed it twice.
Oh my god, how can we forget? I, listeners, watched it rather recently, but my mum, she'd already binged it once before me.
It was 2020, Nandini. Guess you were writing your exams then.
And you were binging horror series? I mean.
Guilty as charged.
So, but that's interesting. Wait, so how was it for you watching it again? Because knowing all the suspense, the horror, the story, weren't you a bit bored already knowing what's coming? Because personally, for me, if I've already watched something, I'm usually never tempted to really rewatch with all that much interest. I might just have it on in the background.
But Nani, for me, I was not bored at all. You remember how engaged I was through the series.
Yeah.
In fact, it was quite the opposite of what you've just said. I think the second time I enjoyed it even more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'll tell you why. It's the kind of show that does not push you to rewatch it, but if you really do, you start noticing how much was built into it from early on.
Mm-hmm.
I think this show it rewards your attention without even demanding it.
Mm-hmm.
And that is why I felt it was satisfying a second time as well. Not because I missed anything, but because I wanted to look again.
Ah, that's really interesting. So, with that, let's get into the story to help our listeners know why The Haunting of Bly Manor is worth a watch. Twice for you, Mum, but at least once for everyone else.
So, The Haunting of Bly Manor is set in the English countryside in 1987. So you wouldn't feel it's 1920s or 1910s or 1800s. So the story, a young American teacher, Dani, is hired as an au pair for two recently orphaned children, Flora and Miles, at Bly. Now, this also reminds me of another Hindi horror movie I had watched long back. I think it was 1920. And you remember I told you about that dialogue that really hit me hard. Where's this old lady, she says, old buildings are like old people who have witnessed a lot quietly and have endured secrets for a very, very long time. I saw Bly Manor, the building, and you can imagine it was so eerily similar.
Oh my god, that's a really deep thought. Sends chills almost. Just to clarify, my mum watched the movie 1920, not watched it in 1920.
Oh my god, again, Nandini.
All right. So, from the get go, The Haunting of Bly Manor, it makes it very clear. It says, dead doesn't mean gone. Bly, it's not a traditional horror full of constant jump scares, like we said. It's more about how people's memories and their past haunts them. In fact, Mike Flanagan, the creator, his specialty is horror that is deeply emotional.
One thing that I loved is how Bly Manor, the house, it feels like a character. It's not a house, it's not a building. The narration, oh my god, that makes the house come to life. You remember when Dani first arrives,
Yeah.
the storyteller, the narrator says, it yawned open to welcome her home.
Oof, yeah.
And then, honestly, that did scare me a bit. Imagine a house yawning open, and it felt as if the manor was alive and it was watching.
Yeah, or something that would literally swallow you, waiting to swallow you. That's really interesting. So, as we said, it's 1987. Dani Clayton, the au pair, is a young American from the Midwest, and she comes to England for a fresh start, has a past of her own, obviously. She's hired by Henry Wingrave, the wealthy uncle of two orphaned kids, to be their au pair. Henry himself actually stays far away in London for reasons unclear at first, but you will find out why. Now, at Bly Manor, Dani meets the children, Flora, about 8 years old, I think, and her older brother Miles, maybe 9 or 10.
10, I think.
Yeah, I think they were 2 years old apart, right?
Yeah.
So, Flora, see, she's immediately a ray of sunshine. But Miles is an odd little gentleman. He's very polite, but sometimes too mature in his behavior.
Yeah, and then we have the Bly Manor staff. So you remember Hannah Gross, the housekeeper? She's often found gazing off, lost in thought, with a cup of tea in hand. That she barely drinks. Now then there's Owen, the cook, the chef. He keeps the mood light and is very caring. And Jamie, the gardener, she's down to earth, she has a bit of sarcastic wit. As an audience listeners, you also quickly learn that Bly Manor had a previous au pair before Dani, a young woman named Rebecca Jessel.
Yeah.
Rebecca died about a year ago in a tragic incident at the lake at Bly Manor. And then, tied to the story, is Peter Quint, who has vanished by the time Dani arrives in the scene.
And very early on, as we started watching this series, we were left with so many unanswered questions. Mum, do you remember that moment where, I think it was one of the first few episodes, Dani spots a man on the parapet and no one else admits to seeing him, but Flora and Miles, the two kids, they exchange glances that suggest they know a bit more. And that sets up one of the central mysteries. Who, rather what, is lurking at Bly? There's also Flora's dollhouse. It's not just a toy, it seems to act as kind of a map of the spirits in the house. She has all of these handmade dolls that correspond to people and possibly ghosts at Bly. And at times, if you remember, Flora urgently insists that certain dolls need to stay in specific spots. And remember, there was that one doll that she kept under the dresser, and when it was moved by Dani, Flora was really upset.
Yeah, it felt as if she was like the older lady at home trying to keep things in order, in control. Remember?
Yeah. No, but the dolls themselves were so scary.
The faceless dolls and some with different characters. Oh my
Right?
god. Yeah. The show really rewards paying attention, listeners. This is one thing we would repeat over and over again. I'd say to any new viewer, this is not a background noise kind of series. You'll want to watch closely because very subtle things like a reflection in the mirror, or even a doll's placement, as Nandini mentioned, or a character skipping a meal, all of these matter. The first few episodes will raise a lot of questions. Why won't Uncle Henry visit the house? Why does Flora keep looking over Dani's shoulder as if someone's behind her? Or why does Miles know things kids should not? Why won't Hannah eat? Who is that faceless figure we glimpse in the background? So there are too many mysteries that are stacking up one by one.
And that, I think, really keeps you hooked to the series. That's what sort of
Absolutely does.
forced me to watch one after the other, one after the other. And to be honest, something that really impressed me about the series was the craft, the way the story is told. It often uses flashbacks and dream sequences, and I think Mike Flanagan really loves experimenting with structure. If you remember, I think it was episode 5 that focuses a lot on Hannah, and it's deliberately disorienting. We follow Hannah as she seems to jump between memories that are out of order. I think overall the storytelling is really powerful, and if you wait patiently, the end will surprise you.
Yeah, and since we have two podcasters here with different generational perspectives, I'll note, as someone a bit older, I grew up on slower burning stories and classic literature. So, I believe Bly Manor wasn't trying to constantly shock you, it was more interested in making you care and think, take a pause. And it felt, to me, listeners, honestly, it felt almost like reading a novel, a very visual novel.
That's really interesting. Because as someone from a younger generation, I say I favor faster paced stories. So at first, I did find Bly Manor really slow. There were some minor subplots in the middle, I think, that I thought, why are they here? They don't really contribute to the main plot. Don't get me wrong, they were interesting in their own right, but were they really needed?
I get that, Nandini, but here, the storytelling ensures that you do both. You feel uneasy from the supernatural elements, the scare, and then you feel deeply moved by the human element. And for that to happen, Nandini, you do need subplots and a bit of character building. And let's not forget, Nandini, you felt that. You cried in the last episode too. I watched from the corner of my eye, which is evidence enough that the character building was essential.
No, that's fair. That I will admit. I guess we might just say some call this slow, others call it immersive. I think both are valid. We would sort of leave that to your own judgment. But considering all of that, Mum, what do you think? What kind of viewer would enjoy The Haunting of Bly Manor the most?
I'd say if you love slow burn, character focused stories that have a lot of depth, but also great scary moments, this is for you.
As for how to watch it, I strongly recommend watching attentively. This isn't a series to just have on in the background while you're doing your chores or sort of scrolling on Instagram or TikTok. You'll miss crucial context if you do that. It is very tempting to binge, but each episode gives you a lot to chew on.
And one more thing, listeners. Please do not be put off by the first couple of episodes, even if they seem terribly slow, because the show builds momentum. The halfway point, which is episode 5, is a real standout, and after that, most people are compelled to finish. Nandini was.
Yes.
You stick with it, it's worth the journey. And for that, I will give it a solid 10.
Your first 10.
Of course, it is.
For me, I would say, all things considered, it's a 9. This, if you think about it, Mum, is an improvement because once all of these mini subplots were introduced, I had dropped my rating down to a 4, remember?
You know what? You've always been the more critical one in the family, so I am not surprised. All right, so that's the beauty of a show like this. It surprises you. And Anandi, it did surprise you too.
Agreed.
Sometimes it's not about how it starts, but about how it finishes.
And speaking of surprises, next week we're switching gears completely.
Oh, yes. No ghosts, no murders, no thrillers. But plenty of heat, literal heat.
We're diving into the world of high stakes cooking and a Netflix reality series where pressure, plating, and personalities collide.
And I'm sure for all our MasterChef fans, including me, the upcoming review will delight you.
But just to be clear, it's not MasterChef, but it is something like that, intense, a lot more global, and yes, just as addictive. So stay tuned. We'll see you next week at the table.